Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to Integrate Online, presented by the West Virginia University Reed College of Media, which offers renowned online master's degree programs in marketing communications. Today's topic is personal branding, which is particularly timely because we are at an inflection point in workplace culture as the pandemic burnout fueled what's become known as the Great Reshuffle or the Great Resignation. And people really are rethinking their career goals and their work-life balance. So now is an opportune time to reconsider what your goals are and how you should refresh your personal brand for the new year. And here to tell us how, we have with us in an encore performance, clinical professor of marketing at the College of William & Mary's Raymond A. Mason School of Business, Dr. Dawn Edmiston. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we also have with us again, personal branding coach, host of Let's Talk About Brand, and senior editor of Social Media Pulse Community, Christine Gritmon.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And me, Amy Teller, online instructor in the Digital Marketing Communications program here at WVU and in William & Mary's online MBA and online Masters of Science and Marketing programs. So on the agenda here today, we're going to start by examining the what, who, and why of personal branding, as well as the 5 things you should do to refresh your personal brand in 2023, based on some best practices and some of the emerging trends that we're seeing in the industry. And we'll also highlight key resources and tools that you need to build or refine your brand. We've allowed some time at the end for Q&A, but if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, please drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to field them as we go along. And we also ask that you please be sure to mute your mics for the presentation portion of this session. So what is personal branding? I'll go ahead and start us off. The way I conceptualize it really is twofold. So in essence, your brand is a set of those implicit assumptions and explicit traits that represent the totality of how other people perceive you. And personal branding is a systematic process that is both self-reflective and socially reflexive, meaning it involves internal reflection, but it's also an external emergent process that evolves through interactions with other people. And through this process, you have the agency to frame or reframe the narrative surrounding your brand by defining what your unique value proposition is, and then communicating that value to others in order to position yourself strategically in the workplace and ideally make a positive impact. So in full transparency, Dawn taught me everything I know about personal branding. So I
could have never stated that as well as you just did. You have just made me very proud.
Well, I was going to say I'm probably taking the words right out of your mouth, but Dawn, what are your thoughts on what personal branding is?
It's such a privilege to be here with all of you today. I have been a marketing professor for more than 2 decades. And I currently teach at the College of William & Mary. And I've noticed that we have a few of my colleagues joining us. So I'm always so happy to engage with you. And at the College of William & Mary, I have the joy of talking about topics like marketing strategy and, of course, personal branding. So I like the sentiment that your personal brand is how people talk about you when you walk out of the room. And in my case, I want people to see my personal brand promise as striving to teach individuals and organizations how to discover and share their value with others. In fact, that's the first line in my LinkedIn About section. And of course, what I hope I can do today with all of you. However, I will also share that even though that personal brand promise is only about 12 words, it took me a significant amount of time to actually articulate that brand promise. So I want to reassure you that I know personal reflection is not always simple, but you have taken an important step by being with us today, and it is so worth the effort. And with that, I will allow Christine too to share her insights with us about personal branding.
All right. So I always say that your personal brand is the version of you that lives in other people's heads. And so, first of all, you do want to have that. You want to be taking up brain space in other people's heads, in relevant people's heads. That's very important because I mean, that's who you want to know. That's who you want to have impressions of you, and that's who you want to be thinking of you. But you also want to make sure that those are accurate impressions. And so, by that, measure of personal brand being the version of you that lives in people's heads, pretty much everyone has that on some level. If anyone has ever said, "Oh, I saw this thing that reminded me of you," guess what? That's kind of part of your personal brand. But when it comes to the professional element of that, you want it to be able to do you some good. You want it to be able to have some benefit to you. And that's where actually taking stock of and awareness of and control of your personal brand is really important, because if you actually want it to serve you in a professional way, you want to make sure that the right people have the right impressions. And they're not going to have any impressions at all if you don't make an impression to give them. There's that oft quoted statistic about how many brand touches are needed for someone to buy. And I've dug into that before. I was like, I want to see what study that was and what the actual number is so I can cite it. And it doesn't really exist. It's just something that we marketers say. But the fact is, marketers used to say it was something like 7 brand touches. Now it's so many more because we're being touched constantly by so much information, by so much content, by so many brands on the internet, that really, in order for you to make an impression, you have to be putting something out there that actually tells people who you are, why they should care, and why you're the one for them. And we're going to talk in a little while about how that can benefit you no matter what your status. If you're a student, if you're in business for yourself, if you are an employee even, we're going to talk in a little bit about why it really matters to you and how you can shape that. But yeah, at its bare essence, I say that it's the version of you that lives in other people's heads, which can really be a help or a hindrance, but it really can be a help.
I agree. So, Christine, who needs a personal brand?
Well, thanks for setting me up, Self. I forgot this was immediately after. I say that everybody does. So people, when they think of personal branding, a lot of times they initially think of an online influencer or, a consultant, someone who's in business for themselves because, they are the product. So people often associate personal branding with, being something that's needed for people where they are the product. But everybody actually could benefit from having a personal brand. If you are a student just starting out in the workplace, it's really important to be able to stand out and leave a lasting impression, because keep in mind that you are going for jobs with a whole bunch of people, and people may not know you yet. So making sure that when they find out who you are, when your resume comes across their desk, whatever it may be, they're going to look you up. Make sure that they have something to see that accurately presents you the way you want to be presented, and that's going to stick out in their heads as being what that person is looking for. In addition to that, even someone who's been in the workplace a long time, let's say you've been happily employed at a company, you don't want to be an entrepreneur or anything like that. You're happily employed for years and years and years. You still need that personal brand, because your personal brand really just means that people know and care who you are for a reason. Anytime I talk anywhere, I paraphrase Bob Berg. He said, all things being equal, people choose to do business with and refer business to people who they know, like, and trust. Know, like, and trust is what it's all about. And that really is very important to build that know, like, and trust factor, not only as a business owner and not only as someone who's going out there and being hired directly, but also as an employee, as someone is considering for a promotion or a special project, as someone who maybe another company is even taking a look at. It's really important to be able to kind of leave that impression and to be someone who people feel like they know, like, and trust. There is nobody who couldn't benefit from that.
That's excellent. And so, to kind of dovetail off of that, Why do you think personal branding is important from an individual's perspective?
So it's important from an individual perspective because, I mean, your reputation is what can help or hurt you the most. If you don't have a reputation of any sort, you're really starting from zero. All that exists is whatever your achievements are on paper. If you do have some degree of professional reputation that is good, it precedes you. You get doors opened to opportunities that you would not get otherwise. Again, because people feel like they can know, like, and trust you. That lets you skip the line a little bit because your reputation precedes you, and you don't have to prove yourself quite as much because you already have proven yourself to others. And of course, it can go the other way if you have a bad reputation or if you have an inaccurate or out of date personal brand because you haven't taken control of your reputation and of the impression that you're leaving on people and who you're leaving it on. Then that can also be a problem because people might say, I've actually been in rooms where people have brought someone up. We've said, yeah, I know who they are, but I don't really know why. Like, I'm not sure what they do. And think about how much more useful it would be to that person if it was like, oh, I know what they do. They're actually really great at this thing. Oh, hey, we need someone who's really great at this thing. Or, hey, you know who they should meet? It just opens up so many opportunities to you as an individual to steer the course of your own career. Not only in terms of having mobility in terms of job and industry and all of that, but I mean, even in terms of winning the trust of your coworkers, of your bosses, of the people who work under you, even if you sort of have that version of you in their heads that is known and liked and trustworthy for the right reasons, it's really going to help you. You're going to have to prove yourself a lot less. You're going to have people's trust a lot more. You still do have to earn it. You don't start right off the bat. People don't say, oh, she has a great website, I trust her. You have to do a bit more than that. You have to actually earn your reputation in people's heads. But, you know, it is a very good start to at least be aware of the type of reputation that you want to have and the type of thoughts and words and categories that people put you in their heads.
Excellent. Don, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and to build upon Christine's sentiments, personal branding is ultimately all about relationship building. So as an individual, it is really important that you are actively involved with curating your own brand. Otherwise, the online world may simply create it for you, and it may not attract the relationships that you want or need in your life. And keep in mind that ironically, your personal brand is inherently not about you at all. Rather, it's actually about the value that you can contribute to others. So when you're developing your personal brand online, it's really important to focus on the benefits and the results of what you do and why you do it, rather than the features of your products or services. And that's actually a good segue, Amy, to the next slide, relative to what's the value of personal branding from an organizational perspective. So if you are on this Zoom meeting today and happen to be in a management role, many of us are missing a huge marketing opportunity if we are not leveraging our employees and their personal brands to build brand advocates for your organization. You know, ultimately in sales, just as Christine mentioned before, and just as Kristen mentioned in the chats, how much she appreciated the quote that Christine shared. We teach that people foremost want to do business with good people, and sales are often determined by the relationships formed between people. So you should be encouraging your employees to share updates about your organization with others, and you should be tagging specific employees in your social media posts to tap into their networks as well. And of course, personal branding also has an important role in entrepreneurship, which Christine will share with us now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hugely important. And the old school way of thinking was more like, well, we don't want our employees to have strong personal brands because then other companies might poach them, or they might have a little too much of that personal freedom and you know, leave us when they get too good. And that's just nonsense. And especially with the way the employee-employer relationship has been shifting over the years, it's becoming a lot more employee friendly. Amy mentioned at the beginning, the Great Resignation and all of that. People aren't staying where they're not engaged. People aren't staying where they're not appreciated. And companies are recognizing now that they want employees who are there because they feel supported, they feel stimulated. There's a place where they can grow and they can do their best work and they're proud to be there, not because they don't have other options. So it's a great idea for organizations to encourage this, to encourage employees to have strong personal brands. A few different reasons. As I said, it makes the employees feel supported, which is great for employee longevity. It's much better to keep your smart people there than to have to go recruiting new smart people to come in. It's also good for your organization because you get that halo effect. If people are looking at that smart person as a thought leader within your industry, and that smart person comes with your company's name connected to them, that is great for your company's reputation in the industry. People in your industry are looking at thought leaders, no matter what industry you're in. So why not have your people be those thought leaders who other people are looking at? Finally, it's also incredible for recruitment. If your company is the one who has those people who others are looking up to, that's going to seem like a great place for upcoming people, the thought leaders of tomorrow, or even the other thought leaders of today to be, because they're going to say, you know what, this is a place where someone who I respect, know, like, and trust works. They feel if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And this is a place where I know that I will be supported and grow. So really nowadays, companies that are behind on that are really going to lose out because the talent is going to go where it is appreciated and grown as opposed to kind of hidden away.
Excellent. And kind of on that note, here are some statistics that demonstrate the importance of creating a professional online presence from an organizational perspective, as well as an individual perspective. So according to a 2020 survey from the Harris Poll, 67% of hiring managers use social networking sites to research candidates, and 55% actually did not hire applicants because of what they found. And 21% said they wouldn't even consider a candidate who does not have an online presence. And these figures may actually be a bit conservative because research committees are often advised against using online profiles during the screening process. But in reality, your online presence likely factors into decision-making at some point, which reflects, again, the importance of creating that professional online presence as part of your brand. So now let's dive into what are the 5 things you should do to refresh your personal brand in 2023. And I'll start us off with number 1 is reestablish or establish your authenticity. And Dan Garcia, I think you threw that in the chat. Authenticity is key. So depending on where you are in your personal branding journey, whether you are in the beginning stages of building your brand or are considering a complete brand overhaul, or maybe somewhere in between, authenticity really should serve as the foundation and the framework around which you build your brand. Transparency and honesty are essential to building trust and credibility, and therefore really are fundamentally important to cultivating a strong and ultimately a sustainable, positive personal brand. And we're seeing this emergent theme around humanization and humanizing your brand, perhaps maybe as a countermeasure to the loss of human connection during the pandemic, or maybe a rise in AI content generating technologies like ChatGPT. And for those of you who might not know what that is, it's Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which is a chatbot launched by OpenAI in November 2022 that generates original and seemingly convincingly human text content. But regardless of what those causal factors are, we're seeing this subtle shift to content that's more relatable and genuine and real. So whether you're just starting or looking to refresh your brand, be true to yourself, which is one of the best ways to differentiate yourself because you're unique. And at the center of content, make sure that it resonates with your audience on a human level. Maybe don't shy away from being transparent about your shortcomings, maybe offer a glimpse into your personal life. And this also speaks to the need for self-awareness and emotional intelligence, both of which are skill sets that have always been important, but we're seeing them become increasingly important in these times of maybe uncertainty and change, because as Dawn said, personal branding is essentially a social endeavor. It's all about relationships. And we're seeing a greater need for connections centered on empathy and inclusivity. And to achieve that with any degree of efficacy, I would argue that you really need to be genuine and authentic. So, Dawn, could you tell us about number 2?
Yes. Any of my current or previous students will tell you that I am constantly emphasizing in the classroom that you must know your target market. And I actually want to acknowledge Danielle Messick, who was a student of mine nearly 20 years ago at my college before William & Mary. And I'm so appreciative of all of the comments that you are sharing in the chat. But as I've told her and as I've told Amy, please keep in mind that you should never try to be all things to all people. You need to have a clear target market or audience in mind, and you should not focus on those social media channels that are not relevant to your audience. And another comment that I want to make, in 2023, it's the ideal time to understand if your audience has actually shifted. So currently, there may be those of you on the call, we've just been seeing it in the news so much since the new year about lost jobs. And if that's the case, your audience has perhaps shifted from the connections that you had in your previous field to connections in a new field of interest to you. And if any of you happen to find yourself in this position and are seeking new opportunities, I want to mention that I just posted on my LinkedIn feed this morning a wonderful resource from Christine that serves as a LinkedIn checklist for when you've lost your job. And speaking of Christine, she will next address assessing or reassessing your network.
Yes, and this is something that I've had to do several times now, because the thing is, a lot of times when we think of our network, we think of it as being sort of contextual in terms of, well, my network is people I know locally, or my network is people I've worked with before, or my network is people in my industry. But actually, it can be very smart to really look at your network from different angles, because one of the great things about a strong personal brand is it can help launch you through pivots, whether they are chosen pivots because you have new interests, or unchosen pivots, as so many people are unfortunately experiencing right now with mass layoffs and such. So it's a good idea to kind of every now and then take another look at your network. First of all, from the prism of who do you need? So you can do it very targeted. Who do you need right now? What are you trying to achieve right now? And what people do you want to make sure that you are in the minds of? Who do you want to make an impression on? Who's in your mind? Who is relevant right now? But then you also want to take another look every now and then at maybe who's in your network where they have shifted. Maybe they weren't necessarily relevant to what you were trying to do before, but either something shifted with you or something shifted with them. They may have a relevance now. Maybe it's not even them directly. Maybe it's someone who they know. My first 2 paid speaking gigs of 2023 came through someone I met through volunteering like 5 years ago, and someone who I became friends with in 3rd grade who I've never worked with in any capacity, simply because I put out there what I was going for, what I was looking for right now, and I put it out to my network. I put it out on LinkedIn, and they saw that, and they were now in a position to give me what I was looking for. I wouldn't have even thought of them. But the one who I met volunteering was on the planning committee for a conference that did have a speaker budget, which was nice. And I wouldn't have thought of that. I wouldn't have known that about her, but it was something she was doing for work. And then my friend from third grade just started working with a Fortune 100 company who's looking to develop their internal thought leaders. Hi. So not only would I not have necessarily thought of them, but thankfully I kept that relationship going and open without knowing where it would lead. But also I was able, through my strong personal brand and through my, communication of it, to express, here's where I'm at right now. Here's what I need right now. And they were there to see it at the right time. Though to that end, I've also been looking at the holes in my network lately. I'm looking at where I want to go in 2023, and I'm realizing, I need a little bit more of this. So there's people in my network who maybe I wouldn't have thought would be a connection for something before. They were just kind of, nice people. Now I'm taking another look at them, and I'm actually writing to them and, asking them questions. And I'm realizing some more people who I should reach out to. The more I'm looking in different areas, I'm realizing, this person seems to know a lot of people in common with me. They'll probably say yes to my connection because I have that social proof, that little bit of extra trust, because I'm known, liked, and trusted by people who they know, like, and trust. So it's definitely always a good idea to take a look at your network. Don't take it for granted. Don't assume, that who you know already is all that you need to know. And also don't necessarily sleep on the fact that people who you met in one context may be in a whole different context now. So it's worth always kind of taking a look and keeping that network nice and warm.
Yeah, I like how you talk about finding those gaps when you re-examine your network. So could you tell us about, number 4?
Well, this is highly related, which is, my network and my people who used to be the ones who I needed to be known by, because it was who I worked with, used to be, tiny mom and pop small business owners. That was who needed to know me. That's a very different network than what I'm looking to work with now. Now I'm trying to work with organizations, with companies. I'm trying to do that kind of internal thought leadership thing. Very different network. And when I first decided on this shift, I looked at it and I said, well, since this is a change in my narrative, I haven't built the network to support this. And then I realized that that was foolishness. I absolutely had those people there. I just hadn't given them anything. I hadn't offered them anything because, that they weren't who I was talking to at that time. So changing your narrative and changing and reassessing your network really go hand in hand. Changing your narrative is an interesting thing when it comes to personal branding, because when it comes down to it, as long as some of the core things that you have identified and communicated about your personal brand remain consistent, you can change the specifics of the narrative that those traits about yourself are playing into. To go back to my own career, when I started, tiny local businesses. But my core things that I communicated was, I care about helping people succeed. I care about helping people understand these things that there's often a lot of shame around not understanding. People who don't know how to use social media, for example, they often feel really embarrassed about it. Like it's something they should know, like everyone knows and they don't, when that's not true. So coming at it with a spirit of kindness and trust, saying, yes, you can do this vulnerable work with me. That's something that was very important for that audience. That's important for this audience as well. The audience that I'm going for now needs to know I care about helping people succeed. I'm not going to make you feel like an idiot for not knowing things, because there's a reason it's my job, because not everyone knows it. You can feel safe doing this vulnerable work with me, because my whole thing is being supportive. And that has been a thing throughout my personal brand, no matter how I have applied it. So you can change the narrative of your personal brand, the way you're applying it, as long as you make sure that your genuine traits, your why, or elements of your personality stay consistent, so that when you're presenting this new narrative, they don't feel like you're a different person. They don't feel like you've changed your tune. They feel like you've simply evolved in this direction, and they'll go with you on that journey if you keep that trust of the essentials intact.
Excellent. So last but not least, Dawn, could you tell us a little bit about number 5, reevaluate your brand?
Yes, the fifth and final tip, the importance of reevaluating your brand. Let's keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, you cannot be all things to all people. And honestly, I get exhausted just thinking about that proposition. So when curating your brand, think about 2 or 3 characteristics or experiences to highlight in your brand narrative, as Christine mentioned earlier. Most people are unable to remember more than a few points, and in all likelihood, they may only be able to remember just one about you. But the ultimate goal is to control the impression that you give to the audience. And if you present too many examples or experiences, your audience will simply choose what they remember for you, and it may not reflect your true personal brand promise. And having said that, if you do not already have a LinkedIn profile, develop one. And if you do have a LinkedIn profile but have not been active, I would encourage you to start using it and connecting with me. There's rarely a day that passes that I do not hear from somebody in my network about how LinkedIn has been a valuable tool for them. And if this is the first time that you're meeting me, I can share with you firsthand that I have my dream job at William & Mary as a result of LinkedIn. And if you want to read more about that, it's actually the first article that I ever posted on LinkedIn. But thankfully, I had effectively evaluated my brand and positioned my brand to be one that LinkedIn and its algorithms understood and were able to connect me with this dream job. So with that said, we will summarize the 5 tips that we have shared with you to establish your authenticity, assess your audience, examine your network, envision your narrative, and evaluate your brand through a brand audit. So with that said, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Truly, this is one of our greatest joys, is you've taken the time to be with us, and we would love to be able to connect with you and hear about your journeys and support your journeys as well. So with that said, I will turn it over to Amy and we will open it up for questions.
Yeah, so this is the portion.
Wow, this is amazing. I love seeing those smiling faces and all those names.
So please don't be shy and let us know if you have any questions. Dan, I know you had some great things to say in there. And Jen Barbara, I know that you made some great comments about that responded to Dawn. So please feel free to make this more of an interactive discussion.
I should note that I'm about 10 minutes away from Dan right now. We're in the same area and we know each other in real life. So hi, Dan.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Dan. It's so good to see you again. And speaking of Dan, it looks like Daniel Morris had a really thoughtful comment as well about employers looking for people that are laser specific relative to products and services. They're not investing in great marketers who are not as specific to their business. They want immediate results. And that may be true of certain employers, but I can promise you that's not true of all employers. So if that is something that is of interest to you and you understand that that's the market, you understand that that's your audience, then you want to meet them where they're at. But I also want to reassure you in my, more of 2 decades in higher education, that we can pivot. And as Christine had mentioned before, understanding the power of the pivot can be really empowering for all of us. We hosted the chief operating officer at Saatchi & Saatchi at William & Mary a few years ago. And Saatchi & Saatchi is a global advertising agency. And they had conducted research that had shown that you are going to have this generation, if you're a recent graduate within the past few years, you're going to have between 18 and 32 different positions in your lifetime. So if you happen not to be working at the moment, or you're not where you want to be working at the moment, again, hopefully you'll take the insights that we've shared today and help you move forward towards your career and continuing to build your career. Your personal brand promise is not necessarily static. Your personal brand is not necessarily static. So as you continue to evolve, your personal brand will evolve too. But you need to make the concerted effort to make that happen. Control, own your narrative. Do not allow it to be created for you.
I hadn't realized how high that number is nowadays. That's incredible. I remember, so I've been working for, I guess, about 20 years, maybe a little more than that. And I remember, and my parents are, a little older for parents of someone my age. So they definitely came from you work at one company from after graduation till you retire with the gold watch type of generation. And they were starting to get kind of screwed over by that in the 90s. But anyway, so that was kind of the mentality that I grew up with. And so when I started my career 20 years ago, I felt like it would look bad, like I was a job hopper, if I went and got a breadth of experience. And thankfully, I'm so happy that has shifted. I actually credit the millennials with a lot of that shift. That has shifted. Now, I think more and more employers are realizing that you can, instead of being laser focused in one area, there is some value to being well-rounded. I'll never forget one job that I took about 15 years ago that was very un-me. It was not creative at all. It was super like spreadsheety, running reports, all of that. And I took it specifically because I said, this is a knowledge gap that I have. I don't know how to do the numbers, and it's still not the way I'm inclined. Like, it's still not what I tried to do, but I thought it was important to take that position to make me a more well-rounded candidate for future things. And I've changed full-on careers, not just jobs. I've changed full-on careers 5 different times now. I've worked in the corporate beauty industry. I've been a graphic designer. I've been a freelance writer. I've been a full-time writer. I've been a social media strategist. I'm an editor now. There's all sorts of stuff that I've done. And now I'm really happy that there is sort of a mindset shift towards realizing that as long as you know your stuff, and as long as the right people know that you know your stuff, as long as the right people believe that you know your stuff, finding your way and finding your passions and kind of taking detours along the way can make you a more well-rounded person who brings all sorts of valuable insights and new perspectives to whatever it is that you choose to do.
Christine, there seem to be quite a few comments about personal brand audits. Have you ever created one, or do you know of an individual that can provide such a resource to our audience?
I have to say, I'm a little lazy with the audits, actively for good reason. Because when most people encounter your brand, when most people find you somewhere, when most people look you up, they're not going to go much beyond surface level. I think it's really, really important to see, what do people gather about you from the first, 10 seconds of finding you, of finding your online presence, of finding your website, whatever it is. What is that immediate impression that they get? And you never know which one they'll stumble upon. It's a good idea. I know there's been some talk in the chat about Googling yourself. Make sure you go on incognito mode on your browser. Otherwise, your browser knows that you're you. But, it's good to see what's out there. You never know how someone will stumble upon you. You want to make sure that everything's sort of pointing in the same direction and that it's instantly accessible, who you are, what you're about. Are you for this person or not? Do they want to know more? Because most people will not dig. So I would say the basic thing to do is to just Google yourself on incognito, see what the first stuff people see is before they even click. When they do click, is it obvious that you're the same person? Because that person may click on LinkedIn, but they may click on your website, but they may click on your Facebook, business page, but they may click on your Google My Business. Like, you don't know what that first thing will be. So make sure that you're clearly the same person in all of those places, or the same business entity in all of those places. That's, I think, the most important thing to focus on. And then the next thing that I'd really focus on is really just making sure that you've taken advantage of all possible opportunities, all these free opportunities to make sure all your profiles everywhere are as fully filled out as possible. You don't want your about section on LinkedIn to be empty. In fact, your little tagline there shouldn't be your position. It's an opportunity to really add color and tell people what it is you do, who you are. The cover image on top of LinkedIn, so many people haven't bothered with that. All of these are incredible free opportunities to make a really strong first impression. So that's what I would say. I know you can do a lot more digging. There's certainly systems where you ask people who know you personally how they describe you, ask people who have worked with you in the past how they describe you, ask people who work with you currently how they describe you, and ask someone who barely knows you at all. I love that one because that shows what rises to the top. So asking people is one thing to do, but that goes a little deeper. I honestly feel like those quick and dirty first impressions, surface level, are incredibly important because they are what the vast majority of people will see when deciding whether or not they want to dig deeper.
So 2 points I want to build upon relative to Christine's comments. First, absolutely agree about incognito mode. However, even incognito mode may give you different results if you Google yourself from another person's computer. For those of you who are in higher education, go to the college library and Google yourself in a public domain. That also gives you a different perspective as to how people are viewing you. And the second point where Christine had mentioned, so important that you have a consistent personal brand. I love when people see me at conferences. If you were to Google me right now and you were to see all of the images associated with my various social media channels and posts, etc., there's a pretty consistent image, and I really should look like I look right now. So I have quite long hair, which in fact I'm going to cut next week and donate for the 7th time. Good thing I'm doing this today because I might not look the same way next week, but I have always pulled my hair back, especially my first day of class, which is when I'm waiting to cut it. Conferences that I go to, because I want people to instantly see me and feel like they know me, and then I'm a welcoming presence to them. So really giving thought to visually, we live in a very visual society. So visually how your personal brand is represented is also really important. And Phoebe, I just wanted to shout out to you. It gives me such great joy that my former students are on this webinar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with your comments, what Christine had said about, tell the narrative of the job changes, skills that you've gained along the way, how it shapes your own story, what you've learned from that. Again, it's not so much about the positions that you've held, the titles that you've been given, the awards that you've won. It's about the value that you've gained and how you can share that value with others.
Excellent. So I know a couple people also had their hands up, Dan Garcia and Danielle. Did you have a question or did you throw those in the chat? Okay, those are in the chat. So are there any other specific questions?
I was just wondering if this event is part of a series because I really enjoyed it and I'd love to explore another topic with this group.
Excellent. I definitely think that's now on the table for discussion. We appreciate that.
And I want to mention too, Stephanie had a great point. Greater privacy for search. You could use Opera in private. Opera uses VPN. So again, if you have tools to do that, but it is helpful, even if you use, again, a public computer or VPN, these are all different modes and no two Google searches are necessarily ever going to be the same. But one last plug for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not the end all be all, but I will tell you that if you personalize your LinkedIn URL, meaning put your name, make certain it's really simple in the upper right-hand corner, you can edit your personal profile, edit that URL, and that will typically ensure that your LinkedIn profile will be one of the first, if not the first, response that's returned on a Google search results page or other search engine page.
LinkedIn in general, they're really clear about the fact that the more complete your profile is, the higher you will come up in search. That's within LinkedIn, but it's also true for Google. The more information you can feed any sort of search, the better a time you're going to have. And that's also true for LinkedIn company pages. I run a couple of LinkedIn company pages, and one of them we were really getting dinged because it was an online only thing, but they really wanted a physical address. And once we're like, okay, fine, we'll put in this physical address, reach skyrocketed. So they really, really care a lot that you're complete.
Excellent. Brittany, I saw your hand up. Did you have a question?
It was answered. Thanks.
So another point too that I think is really important, it's worth emphasizing, is that concept of being consistent. Consistency is key, and regularly and frequently communicating what a clear and consistent brand message across all channels, but also just popping into LinkedIn on your LinkedIn app, you know, at the beginning or the end of the day for just a few minutes, like a few posts, maybe share an interesting article. And Dawn, I know that you are excellent at doing this. Do you have any tips?
Well, Dan had also already mentioned in the chat about the power of video. Again, we're such a visual, we are visual beings, and we want to connect with each other. And LinkedIn has, evolved so that you can embed video within your LinkedIn profile. You can have it be one of your featured posts in your LinkedIn profile. And it really is so important to have that visual connection. So I have found video to be really powerful. And Amy, you do that so well. I know as a professor, you also provide video feedback. So again, just the nature of being able to use these tools and make connections in a way that people might not expect can be really powerful. Okay, so I haven't said this in 20 years. Danielle, you're raising your hand. It just makes me so happy to see you again. Do you have a question or comment or something that you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to something that was said about halfway through the chat about not being afraid to really put your personal brand out there, especially on LinkedIn, because this is something that I think I personally have only really recently started to do in the past year. And I've been working in my career for 15 years. And I've always, and I'm sure I'm not the only person on this call who has felt discouraged from doing that. And I really appreciated the comment and the encouragement to put yourself out there. Your social media profile is yours. It's not your boss's. It's yours. It's not your employer's. It's yours, and it's your name.
And the hope is that your point earlier too about values and working in organizations, that your personal brand should reflect your own values, but I would also encourage you to work in organizations that also reflect your values. In an ideal world, that's where we should be. And if you don't feel like you're there, reach out to me so I can help you get there. I mean, it has truly, changed my life, teaching at William & Mary and being a teacher. I mean, I really appreciated my decade in corporate America, but my first teaching role at Howard University was life-changing for me. And so to Danielle's point about the importance of values and understanding your own values and seek to have those values, reflected in the organizations where you work and what you do, that is really important. And just one other comment, and then Dan, I see that you have your hand up too. On LinkedIn is absolutely a professional networking channel. In fact, LinkedIn is now owned by Microsoft, that little organization that we might have heard of before, because they don't want you to just be thinking about it only when you need to change careers, for example. They want you to be thinking about it as a relationship builder, because Microsoft knows that if you believe LinkedIn is about building relationships, you will spend more time there. They will be able to capture more data about you, but it will also provide greater value for you. So don't hesitate, again, to Danielle's point, to share personal accomplishments as well. It always amazes me. Earlier this year, I had worked with a team of Army students who had focused their final project on suicide. And I don't typically post student projects on LinkedIn, but like this one just truly touched my heart when you think about the number of military suicides we have on a daily basis. And it went viral. I mean, it wasn't something obviously that I didn't intend for that. I just felt that in my heart and soul that I wanted to share it, and it resonated with other individuals, with individuals I didn't even expect. They ended up getting connections in Congress to help support the programming that they were, proposing, and making connections. I mean, again, I just did it because I thought it was the right thing to do, and it reflected, my values and my personal brand promise. So yes, I just want to continue to reiterate how important it is to be authentic to your brand as well. And Dan, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Also, I mean, I think that the LinkedIn shift has been a cultural shift, because keep in mind when LinkedIn first started in, the early to mid 2000s, this whole idea of sharing things about ourselves online was still pretty new to a lot of people. And it was a lot of people's first time doing it. And now it's become so infused in our culture with social media and all of these things that we're used to bringing our full selves to everything in a way that previous generations didn't. It really has been a cultural shift. And also I've actively noticed, just in the past few months in particular, since Elon Musk bought Twitter, a lot of people who were previously showing up, a little more professionally on LinkedIn, maybe a little more restrained, and bringing their full selves to Twitter, now they're investing more in LinkedIn than they were before, and they're not going to leave their personalities behind. So I think that it has been a really active shift to people bringing their personalities on LinkedIn, and the algorithm loves it. Honestly, because LinkedIn's algorithm is very smart. They want people to stay on the platform, and they realize that human content and human posts and human things really do get that engagement, which means they can serve us more ads. So it's good for them too.
Dan, what was your question?
Hi, everybody. And thank you so much for the presentation today. I think that, there's a lot of great lessons, a lot of great tips. It's not really a question. It's more of a statement that I've taken away, especially in my time at William and Mary with Professor Edmiston. I find that one of the most effective ways for brand development has a lot to do with introspective work. And what that means is checking in with yourself periodically. It doesn't have to be every day or every week in terms of marketing. It's more about reevaluating your direction. How do you want people to remember you? What is the association? And the reason I say that is because I read a book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And one of the chapters in that book deals with, each chapter deals with a different law of marketing. And one chapter is called the law of the ladder, which basically means as you move up the rung of the ladder in marketing, how do you want people to associate with you? So for example, when you're thinking of you want a hamburger, you associate that with something like McDonald's. If you want like if you want to have a soda, you're associating that with like Pepsi or Coca-Cola. The point is that to achieve that new level of success in brand development, it comes a lot with checking in with yourself, how people view you, and also reaching out to people and asking them, how do they feel you add value to a team or to an organization? So I just want to put that out there that it's not only about checking in with yourself when you're changing careers, it's also about doing it when you're with the same career or the same company, and just, having that introspection and just checking in.
Yeah, Dan, that's so important because again, I mean, your organizations will reach out to you. I mean, I'm known at William and Mary as, the individual that this is what I do, and this is how I make connections. So individuals within my own organization, and I'm so happy that several of you are on the call. It's so lovely to connect with you again, but that's really important. And please do not just feel that you should be developing your personal brand when you need it. And I also want to quickly address, Lynette had some really thoughtful comments in chat about working in classified environments or working in financial services. And yes, I actually work with the intelligence community quite often relative to opportunities. And I agree with you that they are, by the nature of what they do, they are more conservative in what they post. But I will tell you, NSA, CIA, FBI, they all have social media networks. So they do have a representation. Now, of course, not all individuals or roles will be able to be represented, but I do work with an organization that is a contractor in the intelligence community focusing on compliance and cybersecurity. And it's important for them to be on LinkedIn because that's where they get their private connections that help them serve the government even better. So yes, of course, you have to be sensitive about what you share, but that doesn't mean that you can't share and that you can't have a presence. Even financial services firms, where there are quite often very strict regulations about what they're able to post on social media, will still give you opportunities to share crafted messages that they've created on their behalf. But that does bring value to your audiences and the people that you serve. So know that those possibilities do in fact exist and are in fact very valuable. I love
So
that.
another thing,
in the chat session, there are different LinkedIn networks. That's like the greatest. Yeah, that's all we need. That's so
yes,
wonderful.
please connect.
You.
I just
Connect
dumped in
with
all my
us.
stuff. I'm like, you know what?
Well, what's great about building a broad network is it gives you greater intellectual and greater social capital. So a broad network generates more opportunities and it gives you access to a wider base of knowledge. It also offers a benefit to your organization because people with greater intellectual capital can lead to more informed decision making and come up with more innovative ideas. And employees with higher social capital also can serve as better brand advocates for the organization.
I mean, I will share with you, that's how I learned about ChatGPT. It wasn't in an esteemed academic journal. It was through my LinkedIn network and people stating, have you seen what this is potentially going to do to higher education?
Exactly. I know it's scary. And Dawn, too, there's also something that you talk a lot about in your courses relative to personal branding, but I think and you alluded to it, but I think it bears emphasizing again, is that the concept of building a brand and the power it has to offer you clarity of purpose. So the process of developing your brand allows you really to focus your efforts on those projects and undertakings that really are in direct alignment with your goals and values. So it's another benefit that benefits, on an individual level, and it differentiates you. So it becomes what you're known for. So when I thought about putting together a panel for this, I thought immediately about Dawn Edmiston, right? And I thought immediately about Christine Gritmon, because that's a testament to your strong personal branding.
Well, thank you. This has truly been my greatest joy to start my year with WVU. I think that this is my 4th year, either in a podcast or webinar format. So this is truly as good as it gets for me. So thank you.
And this is actually my 2nd day in a row talking with a school. Yesterday, I was on Zoom with a friend of mine's marketing class at another institution. And it's really, really great. I love the conversations that come out of it. When I say you can reach out to me, I mean it. I'm actually about to be away this week, but I mean, I'm still going to be popping on my LinkedIn. And if you message me or something, I absolutely will talk to you. So I love that. It's one of my favorite things.
Okay, well, we are about at time. Thank you all so much for joining us, and a very special thank you to Christine and Dawn. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this. Be sure to visit integrate.wvu.edu for upcoming sessions, recordings of previous episodes, and to subscribe to receive updates. And we will also be sending out a recording of this via email. Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a wonderful day.